everybody. Welcome to another Aroundtable.ca podcast. I'm your host, Phil, with my colleagues, Steven, the Grandmaster of all Grandmasters, Mr. Dino, the Mister of Two Mountains, and Mr. Johnny, or
The
whatever,
mystery of mesh.
or whatever nickname we have for every show, it will go to Johnny.
What happened to say Johnny slash Gio? No, ma, you such a.
Do you want me to call you Gertrude? But that's it.
You could call yourself that. I love you for it.
Me, I don't, at me, hey, oh.
Hey, oh.
Me guy.
All right.
Yeah, guy, yeah.
Oh. All right, so the topic of this wonderful episode, if you're willing to take the challenge, is Hollywood willing to take a risk on original content? I think that in general, the consensus by everyone is Hollywood is running out of ideas. Everything is either a remake or a franchise, or if it's new, usually it's a book. So everything is already pre-written essentially, and it's just a matter of adapting it to the movie screen. What are your takes on it? And well, I guess we'll start with Steve.
For the most part, I'm going to have to say I agree with you, Phil. I think, Hollywood, it's like everything else now. It has to make money, and it'd rather stick to a safe bet. So they stick to their franchises, or they'll find something. If it made money in the past, they're hoping it's going to make money now and in the future. For original content, you'll have every once in a while, there'll be an artist, a director or a writer that'll pull something and that'll get everybody's attention. I think, I can't remember his name, but he's the guy who's just doing the new Thor movie. He's a small-time director, and he got a big budget movie. James Gunn, too, from Guardians of the Galaxy. He was a small-time director doing a budget, I think, of $1 million before Guardians of the Galaxy. So Marvel is seeing that, maybe they can't get original content, but maybe they can get a guy with an original idea to take into their already established universe. And that's the way of getting around it. Secondly, if you really want something original, you need the big guys from Hollywood, like a Christopher Nolan, a Spielberg, a Francis Ford Coppola, you name it, the big guys, James Cameron. These are the only guys left, I think, that have the clout to pull something original and get the financing. It's a mixed bag. I mean, either, like I said, Marvel's starting to do it. They're starting to bring some of the lower, not the lower guys, I'm not saying it in talent, but I mean like the guys with smaller budget movies into the Marvel canon. And that's the closest thing we'll get to something like that, to get originality in something that's been established over hundreds of years. Or you get someone who's established, like a Cameron, a Nolan, who can do, like, look at Christopher Nolan this year for the summer movies. Dunkirk, I mean, it's a war movie. It's not a superhero movie. There's no CGI. If you ran that by any director today, going into any studio, they're going to say, where's the superhero? And close the door on the guy. But because he's got a track record, he can get away with it. So there is originality. It's a fight, but there's ways around it. And sometimes, like I said, like Marvel is the one that's kind of playing it. They're taking a little risk by taking these smaller guys and throwing them into the big boys' shoes, and it's working. Like Guardians of the Galaxy, as superhero movies go, it's the most entertaining, and I think it's for the fact that James Gunn is a good writer, is a good director, but he started off with smaller budget movies. I mean, I think his last movie right before Guardians took 10 days to film and cost $1 million. I mean, and then he went to $150 million for Guardians, So, I mean, that's it depends on what you mean by originality and by its content. Is it the person? Is it the film? Is it the script? There's many different things we have to look at. And I think Hollywood is always going to be now stuck into making money. But there's always going to be someone there that's going to say, you know what, we got this guy. He's kind of like an M. Night Shyamalan. I mean, he was nobody, And then The Sixth Sense came out, and he became this big guy. He's like a big gun. It depends. I'm gonna say yes and no, and it depends on the situation. There is some, but it's not, I think, the way any of us would like to have it.
Next.
Well, I think it's more original content. If you look at what's coming out in the last year, I would say the last 5 years, it's either franchises or superhero movies, pretty much. The original screenplay it doesn't seem to really exist in the mainstream, and basically is because they're a gamble, and I don't think Hollywood is willing to gamble on these new ideas and new scripts. So that's why you see a lot of these, I would say underground movies, but it's not underground movies. It's how would you call them? The
Indies, independent movies.
yeah, indie movies, where sometimes you find them like they look obscure, but they're sometimes better than an actual Hollywood movie. There's a lot more content and a lot more, and it's done and very well done. Anyways, that's my take on it.
Mr. Johnny Gio, Mr.
Now I can kiss you.
Whatever
The
you
master
want to call
of mesh is in the house, boys.
Whoop, whoop.
M&M.
Let's go this way. I remember when all these TV shows and Terminator 9, those things were talking about, is Hollywood running out of fresh idea? And that was like good 2 years ago. Because from a year ago and over that, it was true, and Dino was right. They're just replaying on franchise movies that we've seen rebooted, and this year there was a lot of originality. More originality came out, not as much as I would love to. You have Arrival, that was original idea. This concept was very well done. You have Split, that came out like it was very well done. It was almost like an average Hitchcock modern style. This year, I find there's a lot of movies that came out more than before, as if Hollywood is trying to wake up. And they're like the rival, the Quebecer.
Right. Denis Villeneuve.
Now he's doing
Blade Runner.
Yeah, you see, and this guy was a small-time director. If you want to see original movies, original idea, concept, you have to go to these film festivals, because big budget. And Steven's right. These Hollywood, these big budget theaters and all that, they want sure bet. It's like we spent $10 million, we want to make double back. That's how that has to work. And originality, you have to go to these Toronto Film Festival, Aspen. That's where you get all these original ideas, because these are low budget movies, and they go there with original thinking, very in-depth storylines and different things. And some of these movies do hit the big theaters after.
Yeah.
And this year it did happen with Fence, with Moonlight. Last year was this 7 Years of Slavery. So I think they're waking up from the way I've been seeing from the 2 years ago to this year. They are waking up, and which I like it, because it's like when you see a movie, and to me, I say it's a non-Hollywood movie. It's because the ending is unpredictable. It's more refreshed, I love that, and we need more of that than. Like, look, just an example, Guardian of the Galaxy #2, I went to see it. It was the best movie I ever seen in a sense, because the trailer was amazing, but it didn't give away none of the storyline, none of the plot of the movie. That when I went to it, and normally when I see the trailer, I figure out like over 80% of what the movie's about. Guardian of the Galaxy got me completely off guard. They changed all the concept of the comic books, how the comic book flow goes through it. Like, everything was unpredictable, everything was unforetold, and that's why I like when I go to the theater and I say, okay, surprise me. Then just sitting there, oh, this is gonna happen, this is gonna happen. So that's what. So sometimes even at Guardian of the Galaxy, which people will find it funny, it was. You go see any of you guys seen the trailer, you go see the movie. You're flabbergasted how it completely takes you to a right turn right away, and it comes an entertaining movie to watch, and that's what I like. Same thing with Split and Arrival. Those are movies that I sat down and goes, ah, I just listened to the movie and I stopped listening to my brain where it might go because it got me, and that's what we need more of.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, I listening to you, you're kind of changing my mind a little bit. I was more on leaning on the no aspect of it because it's a kind of a fine line, right? So, is Hollywood willing to take a risk on new content, or are they running out of ideas? I don't think they're running out of ideas. I think there's more than enough content around the world to make an entertaining 2 hour movie on any topic, whatever that could be. Um, yes, there's creativity out there. I thought The Turn, personally, was going to be about 2 3 years ago. With I don't know if you guys remember, but at one point they wanted to reboot Mortal Kombat, and the way that they did that is they wanted to have a series of vignettes for each character, and they did 2 seasons of those online, on YouTube and on, I think it was called Mortal Kombat Legacy, and it was all vignettes, roughly around 10 to 15 minutes, and the goal of that was to create a movie. Now the goal initially was to have funding made by the public, so it would be a fan made movie, bigger budget movie, but it would have been a budget, and that's a cool concept. You have an online audience, you build it, and then you make a movie. It didn't work out that way, but I thought that was kind of going to be the way of the future, in a sense that they wanted to, if you wanted to get away from the mold, you have to really go away from the mold and not make a Hollywood movie and do it on your own. Either in TV or in movies, you're always going to have those reboots, remakes, whatever the case may be. That's always going to happen. It's happened for the last 100 years. It's always going to happen. But sometimes it seems lazy. So, making a reboot just because of a reboot, like Chips, for example. I mentioned that in a previous podcast. MacGyver, they rebooted MacGyver without, like, it's great. It's okay, I guess, but it doesn't. I don't think they thought about a lot of the things about the show. It seems there's missing something. So I think it's one of those things where there is original content out there, and you are right. There are some movies out there that are original, but it kind of depends also where you're looking at. If you're looking at comedies, there's not that many comedies out there, and the ones that are coming out are not great. The last one that came out, and I can say that I laughed, was the one with Amy Schumer, Trainwreck. That was the last one where I was surprised when I watched it. I thought it was going to be a stupid comedy, and it actually made me laugh. All the other ones that I've watched, either the one with The Rock and Kevin Hart.
Central Intelligence.
Yeah, Central Intelligence. Yeah, it had its moments.
It's okay,
but it's not great. Adam Sandler just checked out like 20 years ago. He forgot.
He's like Eddie Murphy. He's checked out.
No, Eddie Murphy's only good in cartoons.
Yeah, but I remember when he had good movies. Look, if you take 48 Hours, Beverly Hills Cop,
yes,
and Trading Places,
those are classics.
I mean, those were like the funniest things ever.
Yeah, and the thing about
where are those? Where are those kind of movies?
The only time that actually, to be honest, with Eddie Murphy, I know that he doesn't want to do any stand-up or anything. On PBS, from all places, there was the Mark Twain Awards, and he won a Lifetime Achievement Award there. And at the end, he had to give an acceptance speech. And there was a glimpse, just a little bit of hope that there was still comedy in him on stage. He actually did a bit of it was a thank you, but it was like a bit of a monologue. He went on Bill Cosby and stuff like that, and he did a few one-liners, and you saw a glimpse of what he used to. Something happened to him. I'm not saying that every movie that he did had a great script, hence Pluto Nash. Let's
Well,
be
the golden
honest.
child.
But even comedies, like, no, if you look at Netflix, the majority of comedies are stand-ups.
Yeah.
It's not comedy movies. If you want to watch a classic comedy, if you want to watch a comedy that makes you laugh, you kind of have to look at the repertoire and look at classic movies. You know, you have to go back to Animal House and go see, you know, Austin, the Porky's, or the first Austin Powers, or there's no, you know, and the thing about comedies is that they're making money. Like right now, you have Amy Schumer and Goldie Hawn.
Yeah.
Now, yeah. So on paper, it sounds like a dream team, right? Goldie Hawn was amazing in her heyday, and Amy Schumer, although I think she's losing a bit of steam, is still pretty hot right now. Looking at the reviews, it's a lackluster movie, but people are going to go watch it. Why? Because there's no comedies out there. If you want something lighthearted, there's nothing out there to actually, you know. So, do I think they're taking a risk? No. So even then, they're going for the Kevin Harts, the Amy Schumers, but let's remember some of the most classic movies. It's from comics that you never expected to be funny. You know, Animal House, right? It's kind of, you looked at it initially and you're like, it's going to be a stupid movie. It's one of the funniest movies of all time. Caddyshack, same thing.
Yeah.
You know, a bunch of unknowns in that movie. And it ended up being it was a really popular cult hit. You can't, I think that at least for comedy, they kind of dropped the ball on it. I think they're not putting as much emphasis on comedy.
Well, I find, Philip, you know, if you ever noticed that comedy right now, the best comedies, you know what it is? Cartoons. What's it called? Despicable Me. Inside Out? No.
Yeah, you had Inside Out.
Inside Out. Then the other one, what's called? The Minions.
Yeah.
I laughed more on these movies, and even Guardians of the Galaxy was funny like crazy. And then when you see a real comedy, you're right about a lot of comedy movies. You just chuckle. It's nothing. For me, it's like it's made for TV. It's not made for the theater no more. These comedies, like I find they're not spending as much money on movies as people in cartoons.
But there's also comedies have changed because we have to be politically correct.
Correct. Yeah.
I mean, you can't make fun of anybody or any kind of, you know, ethnicity or something like that. I mean, you can't do that anymore. Watching Delirious from Eddie Murphy,
half of them will be
you can't do that anymore. You can't. Or Andrew Dice Clay, you cannot do this anymore.
The last comedian that broke taboos was George Carlin. He's the last comedian that I was actually I'm reading a book by him now. Well, not by him, but it's about him, called 7 Dirty Words, and it's he was going about a bit on how, you know, because, you know, Richard Pryor was kind of from the same, you know, class of comedians that graduated roughly around the same time, right? They all came up at the same time. Those outsider comedians that try to break the mold and whatever. And he went on a bit, I think it's one of his stand-ups, I think it's mid-'80s, about, you know, the N-word. And even now, I'm not saying it because I don't know the backlash. But he goes on this whole thing about the N-word, and he actually talks about Eddie Murphy and Richard Pryor. If you look at any comedian now, other than George Carlin, because he set a precedent, and it was his type of style of comedy, a lot of the comedy is it's false confrontational. Like it's even sometimes it'll be like somewhat controversial, but it's not really. It's kind of like just it's whatever, going after Trump, you know, or going like that. Even Amy Schumer, which in theory she's the female version of a light version of Andrew Dice Clay, dirty comedy, and it's kind of waning a bit. I personally wasn't a fan of her last stand-up on Netflix. I think it's Leather or something Leather. It's not. It was okay. I did laugh at a few parts, but it wasn't great. So it's one of those things where it is true. Comedy, you can't be as controversial as you want it to be, and a lot of times comedy, the whole point of comedy was to push the envelope. And there's very few comedians that are pushing the envelope, and one of them actually this week or last week was Colbert, when he did a joke about Trump and Putin, and he got a bunch of backlash. People wanted him fired because of his incident, but it was a joke. It wasn't. Yeah, it was maybe a little bit, but it's late night TV. It's not as if like it's 4-year-olds are listening to this. But it's the type of environment that we're in now. We're in a PC world where you can't step on anybody's toes. You can't say anything controversial. If it's something that's remotely racist, or maybe taking racist, it can be joked about. And it's reflective, like Steven said, it's reflective in movies as well. So the comedy, what do you have left after not pushing the envelope? You have slapstick with the Jim Carreys of this world, with Ace Ventura.
Which is already 20 odd years ago.
Well, exactly. So, the slapstick comedy, the last slapstick comedy, you had The Mask that came out
Dumb
after.
and Dumber.
Yeah, Dumb and Dumber.
Down the sewer.
Dumb and Dumber 2 was horrible.
Yes, big time.
Because they tried, again, it's one of those things where they tried to recapture the magic of the first one, and they failed miserably.
Yes.
Yeah. There's no comedian that's really slapstick anymore.
Melissa McCarthy is a bit slapstick.
Yeah, she has her own way, but she's a good comedic actress, but she's not slapstick.
Yeah.
Well, she has a little bit of slapstick.
Yeah,
Dino's right. There's a little bit in her.
Well, she's amazing on SNL when she does her Spicer imitation.
But even you see
Did you
the
see her
Kia
this week?
commercial?
She was going because she's hosting Saturday Night Live. So as a promotion, she was going down the street on her dressed up in character and with the stall in front of her, and she's just going down the street yelling at people.
Yeah, it was amazing.
But she also did a Kia commercial about saving the whales and the rhino.
Yes,
It's hilarious on that part.
So, getting back on the topic, I guess I must have gone a little bit on for comedy.
Yes,
yeah,
you did.
Yes, for comedy, I think that they're willing to take a little bit less of a risk. Taking a risk like an Eddie Murphy back in the day, or a Pryor, or a John Belushi, is going to be rare. You really have to make your mark before you actually get a big movie. In terms of action, I think they're starting to make a turn. I think they're reinventing themselves. What we spoke about in our last podcast about Atomic Blonde, which is like a John Wick, and we were talking about how John Wick was kind of like the start of a new era of action movies. I think for that they're starting to think outside the box again. It was a different movie, a different style of movie. It's good. You're gonna have a bunch of copycats. It's probably gonna be a trend for 5-6 years, but at least it was something new. Every time there's something new that's revolutionary, or not even but that's remotely refreshing, it'll make money.
And then they capitalize that and kill it.
Yeah.
Look, case in point, you had Star Wars, the original trilogy. They didn't touch it for years. Forget the remasters with the extra footage, which they ruined the movies with. The original 3 movies, they were classics on their own. They were in people's minds. They even got re-released twice in the theaters. That's amazing. Then they came out with the prequels. And although they were not great, they made a ton of money. And now Disney is taking everything that's franchise of Star Wars and they're making a whole franchise out of it. That's releasing a movie every year, continuation
For
of,
life.
for a long time. So, studios are there to make money. I think we can all agree to that.
Yeah.
And they're gonna go for the money where the money is. If they're not gonna take risks are not gonna be their big forte. Where you're gonna find the secret, the under the radar type of movies, or on the independent circuit. The Kevin Smiths of this world, where they come out with, Jay and Silent Bob and stuff like that, and it becomes cult hits, and oops, they're on a different playing field. Even though
Philip, sorry to interrupt you, but look at Star Wars Rogue One.
Yeah.
It was a gutsy movie because it was It was a real unpredictable Star Wars movie. Everybody dies at the end, give or take. So that one, you have to say it.
Well, it was kind of
risky with that movie.
Well, not really, because you kind of knew it was the prequel to Episode 4.
Yeah, they could have survived.
Not really, because nobody survived. Starting, there's only one left, and it's Luke Skywalker. There's him and there's a few that remained, but in general, the majority of the Jedis died. So it was kind of, the thing is, it wasn't a bad movie by any means, but I mean, again, it's one of those franchises where they're always going to compare it to the original, and the original, in their own right, are masterpieces on a lot of levels. It was great storytelling. It was great graphics for the time. It was revolutionary for the time.
It was, if you watch it again, it's the original with Dark Vader. It was a kind of like a B-movie science fiction movie. Because if you look at the laser fighting, I mean, there you have stormtroopers trying to kill Luke Skywalker.
It's 30 years ago, man. It's
Yeah,
30 years ago.
But it was made to be like not too personal and serious. It was supposed to be more like a bit of like a light science fiction.
Of course, that's it. But the only thing with Rogue One, which I thought it did, it actually made, for the first time in Star Wars history, prequel is not a dirty word.
Yeah, sure.
I think the first episode 1, 2, 3,
Yeah.
Give or take,
Jar Jar Binks.
I like them, but it is a difficult watch. Rogue One kind of brought that back, saying, you know what, we can do prequels and it can be done well. And I think that one I'll give him for it.
Yeah, I agree. All right. So consensus, I think that Hollywood is always going to go for the money, but creativity is still alive and well, and there are going to be movies, and we see that they're starting to turn around on a lot of stuff. But there's still going to be those times where there's still going to be remakes and reboots and copycats of older movies. The thing about the question that I always ask myself, usually for a movie, to see if it's original, can I compare it to anything else in the past? Sometimes there's a movie that comes along, which is maybe once in a generation, that you can say, you know what, on its own, it's wicked. There's never been anything like this. Like Interstellar. It's one of those movies where you're looking at it. I had to watch it a couple of times in order to fully grasp it, but it's like space meets to Twilight Zone.
But too much Twilight.
It doesn't matter. It was original. It was something that was different, and it made the audience think. Walked out of, if you went to see it at the movies the first time, you walked out going, what the hell did I just watch?
No, because I watched it in the theater, I remember, and I find it was the most stupidest movie of Twilight I've ever seen in my whole life, because how can this guy go in a Twilight world and all of a sudden he's in a library and he knows how the book is on the other side and he goes to Earth. See, for me, for example, like Twilight movie, like I would say was better than that, was Arrival. It made sense. It goes back and forth. The future is the past, the past is the future, and what you're seeing is not what you think you're seeing. Arrival was more perfectly better done than Interstellar.
Okay.
Interstellar was a lot of mistakes and trust me, The reason I don't remember all the parts is because I'm trying to forget it. For me, it was the biggest letdown in my whole life because it was a stupid. Because Twilight, don't forget, there was always a new show every week, right?
Yeah.
Well, that was one to me. Interstellar was one of the show. I'm like, damn, I shouldn't have watched it. That was my opinion of that movie. It was too much mistakes.
Admit it. You don't remember it because you were drunk.
I wish I was drunk. I will forget the title.
Yeah. So I think our conversation is done. I think that we've concluded that's. I think there's going to be better things in the future, and we're always going to have to deal with the stuff that keeps repeating and it's repetitive or non-imaginative. All right, everyone. Thanks for listening to us. I don't know how you like my voice, but I know I love the voices of my colleagues. You can follow us on Twitter at Aroundtable.ca with 2 R's, ARR. You can follow us on Facebook, like us on Facebook at Aroundtable.ca. Also go to our websites for your weekly reviews, around www.aroundtable.ca, and talk to you guys next week. Have a good one, guys. Ciao.
Take care.